once you flip your hull over, you're going to discover just how ugly it all looks. But this is actually one of my more favorite parts of building these. Just I find it really fun to actually do the shaping and whatever, because right now this looks hideous, and by the time we're done shaping this with the power plane, it'll have nice kind of flowing smooth lines like you expect a boat to have. But first thing you want to do, there are some obvious things, like if there are any skewers sticking out like this one right here, definitely want to take those off. Power plane hits them. Anytime you're going along, and you'll hear a difference when the power plane hits it. If you're working with a shore form, you'll notice it as well. Make sure you stop and drive down into the foam and cut it off down below the level of the surface, just so you know that you're probably not going to hit that, at least for a couple more passes. We got some defects here in the hull, things like that. We can fill blocks into that if that becomes an issue after we've carved everything down. But at this point, just go ahead and start hitting it with your shore form or your power plane and let everything kind of fall out. And then after you've got it shaped and you've done the symmetry check, then's the time to go back and start looking at the aesthetics, the defects, any holes you want to fill, gaps you want to plaster up, anything like that. But till then, this is still rough. This is kind of like one of those old-time boat builders looking at a log. The Native Americans around here used to make some pretty big trees into really big log boats that they ballasted with rocks, and they would sail. And I know the early explorers over here would find these log canoes, not like the ones you think of like in Polynesia where they're pretty small. These were big. Think like good-sized boats, 6 or 8 feet across sometimes, and long. And they would find them well out on the ocean. This is not like that. This is foam. I hope you don't go way far out on the ocean unless you're really brave. And I hope you make it back if you do. I've been out on the ocean with mine, but I stayed where I could see the shore. And you're kind of like that guy, though, looking at the log and envisioning the boat inside of it. So as you go along with your plane, your shore form, whatever you're using, just remember that you want to keep standing back and sighting along and just seeing how the flow of the hull looks from a distance and from one side to the other. Just keeping in your eyes sort of a balance and symmetry to it as you go, so you don't end up with a lopsided boat. For actually carving the foam, especially if you're using power tools, you're going to make a lot of really fine dust, and I have no clue how healthy it is to breathe that or not. So I really recommend a dust mask or a face mask of some sort. I have these nice ones I bought years ago. I didn't realize they were N95s, but they are. Back before COVID, I actually bought them. They have an exit valve, so it's less likely to fog up your safety glasses, but it's definitely a good idea because I have gotten the foam in my eyeball, and it's a real irritant, so definitely wear those. I like to use a power plane, and I will set the depth adjustment that you have right here on the front of the tool to the maximum depth, which in this case is 1/16 of an inch. You can take it all the way down to 0, and it'll just take off the high spots, but in the initial shaping, you want to go for as much as you can take off. And then I made this, that's actually the discharge hose off of a washing machine pump. I made that as a nice little duct to help, because this stuff will shoot out, and depending on if you're holding it over here on the side, it's shooting up in your face, and you'll look like somebody gave you feathers from the way it pulls the foam off in these strips. So a discharge thing like that is good. Just make sure it's coming out and it's not jamming inside of there. So you get safety glasses, and I don't know what this foam does to your lungs, so it's better to, if you're going to be inside with a room with the dust all circulating around, at least for this step, you should wear a mask of some sort. It doesn't have to be an N95. It really could be just like the little surgical masks everybody these days with COVID is running around wearing, or an old t-shirt or anything like that, but just something to stop the dust. It doesn't have to be anything super spectacular for filtration. I just don't want people, 10, 20 years from now finding out they have pink lung or blue lung from foam dust that they've inhaled making a Sawfish kayak. And one last thing you're going to want is some sort of ear protection, just because power tools are noisy. So as you start this, you want to be holding the power plane kind of at an angle like this, so that you're bridging between the 2 points here until you get them down, until both of these points disappear into that valley is flush with them. See how you can see how this is making an angle on that point, and it's just starting to touch this one too. So you can see how this is taking off those edges, and eventually I'll get down to these valleys. I stopped because I'm hitting a couple dowels, so I'm just going to cut them off so they're out of the way. And then we'll just keep working these out and along and do this all along the length of the hull. So as I've continued to go, as you can see, the valley here disappeared into a seam, which that's good. This one, there's still some minor gaps, so I'll work that a few more times. This one still needs to go, and now I'm starting to take this edge right here. And the thing is with this, I want this one to be at least vertical. I don't want to cut back in. So I'm going to bring it down and then straight along here and working that flare, so that I know that we're getting the right shape as we go, and we're not going to have these weird in and outs along the side of the kayak as we go. So now you can see that this is it's pretty close to the shape I want. It's rough, but it's better that way until you get to your final smoothing off step. And now I'm just working my way down to here, where I have more of these spots where you can see that there is a ledge, there's an edge. And you just do that all along the hull until you've got it worked out, so that it's smooth like that. Obviously, if you cut your bow like I did with all these extra pieces glued on, most of this over here is waste. So you got to do a lot of shaping and forming here, and I'm just going to show you quickly how I still want to bring this line in, and I want this to be the actual foot of the bow, and from here, all of this I want to bring down to here, just in an angle. So most of this is going to go away, which is why I didn't keep gluing things. Got this really long deck sticking off. Chop that off, no big deal. What we're really trying to pick up here is just the curve of the side of the hull, and then flaring to a nice angled point going down this way. So you just do that simply by, like with this. So now you can see how much I've had to cut away already, and just give you an idea, I'm trying to follow this line coming in here, and of course this is going to come down that much anyways to get rid of these valleys and to bring the sides over the way we want. So there's a lot to be removed, and that's perfectly fine as long as we don't go through into the inside of the hull. That's where the problem is. And we may have to glue more foam on if we run into any really thin spots. And just continuing to work that down to bring that in to the shape that I actually want. Getting closer. And that is much closer to what I want to see. Still got more to knock off on the top there. Just to show you what I mean by feathers. Look at me. I got feathers all over, little bits of foam. So anything you can do to avoid them getting into your eyes, your ears, anywhere in your face, your mouth, is the best thing you can do. And if you notice the piles of bricks, those are because the hull is so light, it just pushes, there's nothing to push against with the power plane. So by putting the bricks on there, they're planted on the sawhorses, the boat is, so that I don't have it sliding off on me every time I'm trying to work or having to hold on to it with the other hand. Since you really want to be able to put both hands on the power plane just because of its weight to make sure you're holding it at the right angle. So now, other than that bow, which is going to take some more work, this side of the boat is pretty close to what I want it to be. Now obviously on this corner up here at the top, I'm going to put another bevel like in between these two angles just to give it a more rounded thing, because fabric doesn't like to go over sharp edges and neither does water. When you're gluing the fabric down, it'll stick up. But as you can see, I've gotten rid of pretty much all of the defects. We still got a little bit of one here. We can fill that with some of the lightweight vinyl spackle. And then there's a few areas where you can tell that the top rail, I'm not going to be happy with the outside edge. Like right here, there's kind of a hollow spot. I can glue some more on here. Or I can actually bevel the outside this way, more at an angle like that, which I probably will, just so you're not digging your knuckles on the edge of the hull when you're paddling, because of the rails being just a little bit taller. But as you can see, this is pretty smoothed out. There'll be some eyeballing and measuring and whatever later on, but for right now, I'm going to move on to the other side.